Thank you very much. I have been working at JP Morgan Chase for 2 years and do have the distinct privilege and honor to lead their Military and Veterans Affairs program. But when we first started our effort, one of the key tenets was that our success was going to be a function of partnerships. That if we were going to, our focus is on jobs, home ownership, and education, but you take any one of those priorities and global philanthropy as well, we're not going to be able to do any of this by ourselves. And we do it in partnership with others, whether it's in the veteran servicing organizations, other corporate partners, or the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. And I'm sure you've heard several plugs for the Institute for Veterans and Military Families since you've been here over the last couple of days. And I say this not just because we had the very good fortune to be given the opportunity to be a co-founder of the Institute, but Mike, James, Ray, and the whole team at the Institute have really become or epitomized what I would call thought leaders in this space. But more than just thought leaders, they are very action-oriented. You call them and say, I have an idea, and they say done. And I know that I don't have to ask a second time to see if it's actually moving forward. So if anybody hasn't had the opportunity to work with the Institute or check out the resources that they have or to speak with them when you have questions or issues, I strongly encourage you to use them as a resource. The panel that we are here to talk about today is around corporate setting the standard in veteran employment in the private sector, and how we all can position transitioning service members, veterans, and spouses for success as they re-enter or enter for the first time the civilian workforce. The companies represented today have truly set the standard, and Steve Robinson, who is Vice President for External Affairs at Prudential. I think when I started working in this space 2 years ago, he clearly was at the forefront of all of these things, and he continues to be very passionate and has been a great educator for all of us in terms of what the issues and what some of the solutions may be. Retired Vice Admiral from the U.S. Navy, Keith Lippert, is a managing director with Accenture Federal Services. We're the 100th member of the 100,000 Jobs mission a couple of weeks ago in Dallas, and so we're very excited to have them as a part of that. And then a very good colleague and as we said, BFF, she's taught me a lot in the recruiting and talent acquisition space around veterans, Rachel Book, who is the Associate Director, and I said I love her title, Global Talent Attraction and Diversity at AT&T. It really makes me want to apply for a job there. So there is much more about all of the accomplishments for our very distinguished panel here today in the materials that you were given, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about them individually because I think that what they have to share is much more important in terms of about their daily work. I'm going to ask each of them to speak for about 10 minutes about their programs, and then what they've seen, if it's not in their programs, what they've seen elsewhere. We will then have about 30 minutes, I hope, for Q&A. I would encourage all of you to ask them questions, draw upon their experience and expertise. I know I plan to do that. And so with that, we're going to start with Rachel, and I turn it over to her.
Hi, everyone. I feel like I can go on for much longer than 10 minutes, and I told Maureen to poke me if I get out of hand. But anyway, people ask me all the time, how did you get started? Where do you start when you're looking to build a military recruiting program? What do you focus on? It seems to be very overwhelming for many corporate HR recruiting departments. So what I'm going to do is sort of go through our story of where we started, sort of what catalyzed the advancement of our program, some of the things we focused on at first, some of the programs that resulted, and then of course our results. So first of all, AT&T, for I think the number we use is almost 100 years, has always supported our military in so many ways, from setting up calling centers and giving out calling cards in the Middle East to supporting different community events. We've got an award-winning supplier diversity organization that actually trains disabled veteran-owned businesses in entrepreneurship. They send them to a 10-week program at a university so that they can be better prepared to win contracts at large enterprises. We've supported the Warrior Games, which is the Paralympics type games within the Olympics. We've supported the USO in just so many different ways. And our Veterans Employee Resource Group is actually celebrating their 30th anniversary later this month on April 30th. So, you know, definitely. So I love to say that we were supporting veterans before it was in style, right? Before it became a cool thing to do. Our employee resource group, so again, they've been around for 30 years. They've got over 6,000 members. So employees who are veterans, employees who are supporters of veterans, and they're very active. They get involved in all kinds of community, volunteerism, philanthropy. They give away scholarships. They welcome troops back at the airports. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And then we'll talk more a little bit later about how they serve as really powerful recruitment ambassadors for our staffing organization. So anyway, for years, we were hiring veterans without even trying, right? So we were advertising our jobs on veteran job sites, we were attending job fairs, and we were hiring veterans. And just about 2 years ago, we were given a challenge by JP Morgan Chase to join the 100,000 Jobs mission. And there were some conversations between our chairman, and eventually it made its way to my desk, and it said, okay, Rachel, you got to hire veterans. And so that really catalyzed us to jumpstart our efforts in building out more of a program and really being smart about how to bring in more veterans into our environment. And so the first thing we did was get involved in the 100,000 Jobs mission. And there were 11 companies that started out. And there was just a tremendous sharing of information, sharing of best practices. At the very, very beginning, we were given access to training materials that JP Morgan Chase had put together. We brainstormed with other companies about self-ID and some other issues. So that was one thing that really catalyzed our efforts. The other two, I would say, is first of all, it was just a current event. It was a national need, right, to place all these veterans and to find jobs for them. But really, the third reason, which I sort of, you know, which we've heard other people talk about earlier today, is that AT&T at any given point has between 2,000 and 3,000 jobs posted on our website. So we are always hiring in many areas, in our call centers, in our technicians, in our retail stores, in our corporate offices, in IT and marketing and sales, right? So we always have jobs open. We're always looking for people to fill them. And veterans are a really important segment of our emerging workforce. And we all know the deal. They come with a tremendous amount of responsibility and leadership and skills and all of that. And so these are people that we want to hire because it's good for our business. And so that was really our driving force. We were very careful as we built our program to really mainstream our veteran hiring into our recruitment practices, and I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. So anyway, we had made the decision that we were going to step up our recruiting programs. At that point, you know, we didn't have any dedicated team members, and we really just looked around and we saw there were people visiting bases, and there were job fairs, and there were more job sites. And we took a look and said, you know what, before we go out and just do spend our time on the road really telling more veterans to come and apply, we need to make sure that we've built the infrastructure in our company to be able to optimize their success in our recruitment process. And if any of you have recently applied online to a corporate job, you know how difficult it is, right? You feel like it's a black hole. There's all kinds of steps. You have to fill out all these forms. And it's difficult for anyone, right? It's more difficult for somebody who's doing this for the first time and is learning a new set of jargon in the civilian workforce and in the corporate world for sure. So the first thing we did was we really took a look and said, who are our veterans, right? Who are the veterans that are applying to our jobs? So at the application point, who are the veterans that we're hiring at the new hire stage? And then who are the veterans that already work for us? So it sounds simple. It sounds like you should just check into a system and pull up the information and say, okay, we got X number of these and X number of these. It was very, very, very complicated. We had to go through major hurdles to include ways to solicit that self-ID information. I'll talk about that soon. The other piece that we needed to do was demystify the process not only for our veteran candidates, but we needed to demystify the process for our recruiters, right? So our recruiters, they all understood the value that veterans bring to our workforce in theory, but we needed to get down to that tactical, practical level and teach them how skills match, how do people join the service, what do the different ranks mean, what do the different titles mean. So that was important to us. So the first thing is, I won't get into the details of how we overcame the self-ID hurdles, but if you're curious, you can email me later. But we are at the point now where we ask at 2 points during the application process about military service. So one part is the whole EEO, diversity information, but the other part is at the very, very beginning, we say, have you served in the U.S. military? Please let us know so you can join our talent network. And what that does is it gives us the ability to follow up with them after they've applied to say, do you have any questions about our process? Do you want to speak with one of our veterans? How can we help you be successful? We invite them to a weekly webinar. We send them an email thanking them for their service and really trying to encourage them to be successful in our process. We remind them about things like, if you see a job title that you're interested in, but you see 12 of them, apply to all 12 because it could be in different regions with different recruiters in different parts of the business. So things like that might not be very obvious are things that are important to us. The other thing that we're able to do is we're able to send a welcome note to new hires who are veterans. That wasn't something we were able to do before because the information was so super secret. But now we can send them an invite. We can say, welcome to our company. Here's some information about our Veterans ERG. We encourage you to get involved. Here are some ways you can volunteer. And we also ask them if they're interested in participating in media interviews to describe the way that they got their job. So that was something that was a big accomplishment. The demystification piece was a little bit more complicated. So we needed to educate our veterans on where they might have a fit within AT&T, and we understand that, a military skills translator is not going to solve everyone's problems because just because somebody was a tank mechanic in the military, that doesn't mean that they want to do the same thing in the civilian world. And so we needed to figure out what their career motivations were, what their competencies were, what they were really good at, and we also needed to help them with their resume and with their interview skills. And so what we did was we added information. We enhanced our military careers page, which is great, right? We made it less braggy about AT&T does this and this and this, and more about here are some questions you may have, here's how we can answer them. We also incorporated the tips and tools for veterans in our traditional website. We know that not every veteran is only going to go to the military career site, so we wanted to make sure it was accessible to them wherever they were. And so on our job search page, there's a section, hey, veterans, you can use this link to search for jobs by MOS. We also added, and this is my favorite story, Marie knows I can go on for hours about it, but we created a program called Careers for Veterans where veterans can actually reach out to us and request job search advice. They can request to connect with an AT&T employee who's a veteran. And at first, we administered the program via email, and it was just horrible. It was Excel and email, and it was a nightmare. And now we've instituted a web portal, and we manage these job search advisor relationships through an automated database. We don't call it mentorship because it's not a long-term relationship. Sometimes the job search advice is a quick email. Sometimes it's like, oh, you want to do logistics? Well, at AT&T, we call it supply chain. So when you write your resume, make sure you include the word supply chain, or else it won't make it to the top of our rankings when it's parsed into our database. So little tips like that. And I'm just so thrilled to announce that in the past 2 years since this program has been in existence, about 300 AT&T veteran employees have provided job search advice to 3,000 transitioning veterans. So it was amazing. And the idea came from a job fair. We were at a job fair. We were giving out advice to veterans who were there, and we just realized we couldn't do this. We can't do this every day. We can't be out on the road at job fairs all day. So how about if we do it virtually? And so that was something that we're very, very proud of. The training that we offered to our recruiters was interesting. We got it from JPMorgan Chase, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. It was already created, and we just adapted it to our needs at AT&T. Included in that training is a Mythbuster section. Is information about, people may have these opinions or they have these perceptions about veterans in many different areas, whether it's post-traumatic stress, whether it's technology, whether it's resistance to change, and we just busted all those myths with research, with examples, and it was very well received by our recruiters. They really appreciated just learning about the military. They were introduced to some jargon, and they were also introduced to our Military Talent Attraction Program Manager, and they can reach out for assistance either in translation or to develop a veteran recruiting strategy. So those are a couple things that we've done. And after doing all of this, we actually tripled our veteran hires in 2012 as compared to 2011, which is major, right? And we increased the self-ID of our veteran employees, I think, by 50%, right? So that means that we're hiring more veterans, but it also means we're creating an environment where veterans are comfortable self-IDing, right? Because they understand that their service is an asset to AT&T and not a detractor, which is really, you know, what's most important when it comes to disability, when it comes to the veteran community. If somebody needs an accommodation, they need to understand that this is an environment where they can feel comfortable asking, and then we can provide the help that they need. So we have lots more to do, right? We're not there yet, but we've accomplished so much. The 100,000 Jobs mission has been an incredible asset and resource to create awareness even inside our company, so among our executives, among our business leaders. So we're so thrilled with what we've accomplished so far, and we're just going to keep plugging along.
Thank you, Rachel. Keith?
Well, after listening to Rachel, I think I should probably forfeit my 10 minutes and let her continue. As opposed to AT&T, which I think has a wonderful record for 30 years, Accenture is a rookie in this whole area. And I was telling Maureen, maybe 18 months ago, I wouldn't even accepted the invitation to speak here because I didn't think Accenture was ready to go public with where we were. The seeds had been sown, but the results simply weren't there. And so I wanted to talk to you very quickly about what has happened in particularly the last 18 months at Accenture. You know, if I had to put it very simply, it's to hire veterans, and certainly right now it's to retain veterans within Accenture, and then finally to volunteer and to assist veterans. And to put all this in perspective, we have these employee resource groups like AT&T. We happen to have 9 of them. And they range from, I can list very quickly, Hispanic, African American, LGBT. We have a women's group, and because we had a women's group, we set up a men's group. Asian, interfaith, American Indian, and a military employee resource group. And they were started back in 2005, mainly because of the business model within Accenture, which is really hoteling, which means we have a very small footprint in any of our buildings. We rent them, and we really expect our people to be out with the client, working from home, and only coming into the office when it's absolutely necessary. I mean, it's a very efficient model, but if you're trying to build teamwork, it can be very, very awkward. And so these employee research groups were put together in order to improve networking and the morale within the companies. And basically, the reason it was done was to, I would say Accenture provided money, but it was networking opportunities. Now, Accenture is a very large company, $32 billion in revenue, 261,000 people worldwide. And so to try to get a networking event with something that large, 50 countries, I think it's 48 states, it's a big tasking. There was a second thing that happened that really helped turn things around, and maybe many of you have heard it, but it's called Accenture's Skills to Succeed. This initiative started in 2009, and the tasking was to equip 250,000 people worldwide with job skills, but through volunteer efforts with Accenture, and Accenture donated $100 million to make all this thing happen. Well, this year we surpassed the 250,000 people, and the goal has been raised by 2015 for 500,000 people. And the veterans' effort certainly has benefited from this Skills to Succeed, not only focus on volunteer time, but the money that's been made available to do this, and I'll go into this more. So as I mentioned, we have a military employee resource group. I am the managing director sponsor for this group. As I said, it started as a social network as opposed to the thousands of people. We have 400 people in North America in 22 cities doing what we're doing. And we have telephone calls nationally once a quarter to share best ideas among the 22 cities. So let me start with some of the volunteer efforts that I think you may find interesting. The Marine Corps does Toys for Tots every year, and we are a big sponsor with the Marine Corps in all 22 cities for these Toys for Tots. We send care packages to all Accenture employees who go on active duty either with the National Guard or Reserves and are deployed overseas. We help support the USO in the Operation Phone Home, and we do volunteer funding efforts, contributions from essentially from Memorial Day to the 4th of July to contribute to that. One of the big volunteer efforts has been with American Corporate Partners. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, it's a nonprofit organization out of New York City that asks for support, financial support, and then volunteer support, where they have a list of returning veterans who are looking for guidance, either in terms of starting their own business, finishing school, or whatever. And they match Accenture volunteers with these veterans. There is criteria that you should have before you can become a tutor or a mentor for these things, for these people, and that's usually a minimum age, a certain minimum business experience. That has turned, we have now 80 mentors throughout the United States working on this program. It's not a hiring program, it's an assist program. And it's a one-year program. It requires at least once a month, either face-to-face, or this is Accenture, it means it's either on the internet, the web, or whatever it is for communications. But it's been an extremely successful program. We have created a wall of honor that on Veterans Day, that all veterans at Accenture have a page up that's being broadcast throughout the country about what their military commitment is and what they've done with their lives from a military perspective. And as mentioned, with the Institute of Veterans and Military Families, we are a contributor both at Syracuse University and Purdue. And the last one I wanted to mention in this one is the Kauffman Fast Track, where we are sponsoring and doing classroom and online training for 500 veterans, most of them are which are disabled, helping them on the transition process. So in the last 2 years, Accenture has improved its hiring practices dramatically for veterans. I'm not allowed to tell you exactly what that number is for many reasons, but it has significantly improved. It's through the factors of 10s and 20s in terms of improvements. Probably the defining thing that changed all this is we set up a Veterans Advisory Council with everyone who had a stake in the process. So these are our HR people, our recruiters. I represent the Military Employee Resource Group. It's right across the board from top management, and we sit there and figure out what we have to do to improve in hiring in veterans. And probably some of the things that have helped with all this, and certainly, Rachel, you were talking about it, we had problems initially hiring veterans because we couldn't translate their skills into the skills that Accenture was looking for. Accenture is an IT company. It hires people out of college with wonderful grade point averages and wonderful social skills. And it's very easy to translate what they have done in college to what Accenture is looking for as opposed to what the military was doing. So what we are able to do is then get veterans to volunteer to help translate skills and actually participate in the interview process. And that has completely changed the numbers around. We've also dramatically increased the number of recruiters who are directly focused on hiring veterans. In other words, they're not doing anything else, that's their purpose in life. And they are being held accountable for the numbers that they achieve. There's an ongoing effort that's starting next month in Charlotte, North Carolina, where our office there is sponsoring training 100 veterans, disabled, non-disabled, to be able to compete in an Accenture environment. If this training proves to be successful, this program will be expanded nationwide as an effort to improve what we've been trying to do. So we have, now that we have enough people, enough veterans within Accenture itself, the next step is that we're assigning mentors within Accenture who are veterans that are mentoring new veterans coming into the organization to help in the transition process. And believe me, it's a big deal. We've been awarded a contract with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to help them in their own effort to help veterans in terms of interview skills, in terms of the way that they write resumes, et cetera. We have just started that effort. And we have teamed with other companies, particularly as an example, Bristol Myers Squibb, who have emulated particularly what we've been doing with the American Corporate Partners. And also we are working with the USO very closely in many, many different programs. So that's a very quick summary of what we've been doing at Accenture.
Thank you, Keith. Steve?
I too feel like 10 minutes can't possibly capture everything that we could talk about today. So I will need someone to say stop so that I don't go over 10 minutes.
No worries.
Maureen gave us some nice notes prior to coming here to kind of help us shape our 10 minutes. And so one of the first questions she asked said, what are the key aspects of your program and describe it? So our program is leadership driven from the top. The CEO is the person who drives our program. He is hands-on, engaged, advising myself and Ray Weeks what the mission is and what he wants us to do, and then he gives us the support that we need to leverage the entire enterprise of the company to accomplish the tasks that we need to accomplish. So if I go to HR or I go to global marketing or some other entity within the company and I say, we're working on doing a survey, we need your assistance, it's immediate, there's immediate engagement, and that being that it's CEO driven, it really helps me get my job done. I have absolutely no barriers when the CEO is engaged. We also have something that I think is a little bit different than a lot of companies. We have 2 full-time Veteran Initiative managers, 2 vice presidents. When I was offered the job at Prudential, I realized that it was more than I could do by myself, and I needed someone inside the company that knew the company culture, that could help break down the company culture, and help do the things that I needed to get done. And so we decided to bifurcate the role into an internal and external role. Internal would handle everything that happened inside the company, external, everything outside of the company, government relations and such. So both myself and Ray Weeks do nothing but veterans work in the company for and on behalf of Prudential. And it's our 100% full-time job, and it is a full-time job in the manner in which we're executing it. What we do is guided by the chairman, who obviously, like every other company here, believes that we've got a duty and a responsibility to servicemen and women that protect us. And, you know, much like after World War II, there was this automatic feeling that we ought to do something for the returning veteran. I'm starting to sense that. Maybe it's late, maybe it came on late, but it's starting to happen, and there's a acceptance amongst business that, you know, we really do owe this generation our thanks, and there's lots of ways we can help them. How are our programs structured, and how do they support or assist veterans as they make the transition to the private sector? As I said, we have an internal and external framework. Internally, we are educating the company. It's a nonstop job of educating the company on the value of veterans, dispelling myths that everyone comes home broken, training our hiring managers to understand those veteran resumes that come in, and we're also creating processes whereby those resumes don't get automatically kicked out. If they leave something off that we know they have a skill that they can either learn, or they probably know it, they just forgot to put it on there. We also have an e-learning tool that we've created, which we have shared and will share with anyone that's interested in seeing it. We created it in such a way to distribute it and to give it away. The e-learning tool educates managers and HR professionals on the value of veterans, what veterans bring to the table. It also dispels myths that everyone comes home broken. It talks a little bit about PTSD in the workforce. I will tell you that it was like pulling teeth to get the lawyers to allow us to create this thing, because there's a lot of sensitivity in the legal space of really addressing these issues. But as I was saying earlier, and I know we're going to get into it, PTSD already existed in the company before veterans came along, and so it's something that we already handle, and we know how to work with it. We also have as everyone, I can't stress enough that veteran affinity groups are one of the best ways to assist veterans in your company. You'd be surprised at the intellectual knowledge of those people when you put them all together. They'll start supporting one another. They'll leverage resources. They'll find other companies. One of the things I'd like to throw out there that I've been wanting to see happen is that I would like to see the veteran affinity groups from different companies connect with one another so that they could see what other companies are doing. What are the best practices at AT&T? What are the best practices at Accenture? Just getting to know one another, and maybe even partnering, creating a network of veteran affinity groups. Another thing we do is we really try to peel back the entire company and look for every which way that we can help veterans. So who drives our trucks? Who delivers our mail? Who's guarding the door? Supplier diversity. What do we buy, and who do we buy it from? And are we working with service-disabled veteran-owned businesses? So there's a whole host of ways to peel back the company and look for different things we can do. As I said, we educate our HR staff and our managers on training. We have diversity and inclusion, as everyone else does. Matching grants programs seem to be a really big thing in our company, especially veteran-related. When we had the big storm that hit up the East Coast, our veterans wanted to go volunteer or give money to Team Rubicon, who was out there doing great stuff. And so we said, okay, if you give money to them, we're going to match it. And so that encouraged even more giving amongst our veteran population. We have a program called Vet Talent. I have brochures on the table back there. Vet Talent is our way of it's a workforce development program. We assess, bring veterans into a program. It's either 8 to 18 weeks. We can do it for any operation we have in the company, but I'll use IT as an example. We put them through an IT certification course. We partner that with a major university. They also get an internship at the company. While that's going on, we pay them a stipend, and we pay for their certification. They come and see how that job that they're learning is done at our company. And then if they go through all of those hoops and they want to work for us, we hire them. If they want to take that certification and walk, we salute them and say thank you very much, and they move out. It's a really cool way of getting the talent that you need. And I'll just say that for IT, for example, in the last 5 classes that we've done, we potentially could have recruited our IT infrastructure for the next 20 years. And they're here, they're in the company, they love it, they like the company. You know, we're looking to apply that methodology to other parts of the business. Externally, I manage Prudential's philanthropy. We give to a wide variety of causes, but we try to narrow what we do to what we're good at. And what we're good at is education and workforce development and leveraging what our company's strengths are to help in that way. But we've given to things on the far end of the spectrum, like behavioral health, all the way to reintegration, retreats, events. But I'll tell you, the time is coming where we're probably not going to be able to do all of that. And I know that at some point you guys will get introduced to Thomas Myers from the Philanthropy Roundtable. They're going to be publishing a guidebook which was going to help funders understand what the most pressing and unmet needs are. And so we're kind of focusing our philanthropy towards the most pressing needs, the things that really provide impact. And so there's a lot to be said in the philanthropy space around that. Besides that, I also deal a lot with thought leadership, and we're involved in activities here in Washington, D.C. with a lot of partners that are here in the room today, the Center for New American Security, Joining Forces Initiative, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We've been fortunate to sit at the table and help, through our philanthropy and through our partnership, help be involved in publications that educate America on wellness, employment, philanthropy, the business case for hiring veterans, veterans employment challenges, just a whole host of knowledge that we were able to support both financially and with thought leadership. And I got the 5-minute signal. What are the benefits to us as a corporation of hiring veterans? That was one of the questions you asked me. Number one, talent acquisition. That's the main thing we're focused on. We don't do it, and I don't think anybody here does it because it's necessarily the right thing to do. I know that it is the right thing to do, but we do it because we actually like the people that we get, and we believe that they give us something that is beneficial to our company. The second thing is innovation and return on investment. We believe that by bringing veterans into the company, we get new ways of thinking. You know, this generation, we haven't even tapped into the things that they learned on the battlefield and the ways that they solved problems. We haven't even begun. General McChrystal just recently published an article that was talked a little bit about this, about the lessons learned on the battlefield and how it translates to business. And it's a really important thing in our company to have those kinds of people. And obviously, it makes good business sense. Because we know that we needed to look internally before we looked externally, we made sure that we created trainings for our employees and our hiring managers who may not have the information they need to understand who veterans are, to dispel myths. One of the taglines that, it's a soft launch. Veterans are people you need, not people in need. And that's kind of the message that we want our partners to know, that there's a lot of myths surrounding that everyone comes home broken or everybody has PTSD. And I know that's not true. And it's not true in veterans. So I probably now have less than 3 minutes. Workforce development for us is a important part of what we do. Having a job is a protective factor for many of the bad things that can happen to you in life when you're a veteran. If you don't have a job, there's all kinds of other things that come with that, not having a job. So having meaningful employment is important. And so we're looking at ways to really focus in on meaningful employment, education, and workforce development. Why now? Why do we do it now? Prudential's been doing it for a long time, 130 plus years. But I think the reason why the chairman's stepping out now is because he acknowledges and recognizes that we can't be the company that we are without the support of those who defend us. And so it's part of our responsibility, and I know that that's everybody in here feels the same way. Let me skip ahead. I probably got 1 minute left. Okay. So one of the couple of things I want to tell you about is we produced this survey, Veterans Employment Challenges. We did it in partnership with Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. And one of the findings that came out of it, I think it's particularly relevant to everyone in the room, is that veterans have high expectations for employer-provided support programs. Why is that? Because when they're in the military, they have a team leader, they have a squad leader, they have a platoon sergeant, they have a first lieutenant, they have a company commander. There's somebody to turn to give them guidance for every single thing they do. If they don't know how to do it, someone will tell them how to do it. They are used to support. And what we find is that when they separate, that structure that is encoded in them is taken away, and then they have to try to navigate this new world. So as it relates to veterans and as it relates to companies, the veteran must educate him or herself on the corporate culture and how to negotiate it, just like a coin mission. And the company has to understand the value of the veteran. So both of us have work to do in meeting in the middle. And with that, I think I'll stop there. Those are the things that we're doing in a really Reader's Digest version, how we do it and why we do it. And I will say that I learn from everyone that I meet, and I like to see what other people are doing. And so the work that Mike has done with pulling together the business practices and the business cases and what other companies are doing, that's very instructive, and it helps inform the work that we do. So I'm hoping that this meeting is also going to produce some results that we can share.
Thank you. And you can see why when I started said that this panel was extremely informative and truly epitomizes how the panel was described in terms of setting the standard for veteran employment. I have several questions for the group, but this is intended to be an interactive panel, so I want to check the audience first and see if somebody's got some questions before I start. No questions.
I'll ask Steve because he knows me, but I'll maybe translate it to the other. In the last 2 years, and I realize you all represent the financial, the banking, the telecommunications industries, how many 28-year-old E5, non-college degreed, 11 Bravos have you all hired in the last 2 years?
Not as many as we would like, and the types of jobs, for example, as I said, take Prudential for example. We initially were focused on JMOs, junior military officers, and those with, the jobs that we have require certain levels of education. But as we began to peel back the company, I said, well, who's driving our trucks? who's delivering the mail, who's guarding the front door. Those are jobs that have a meaningful wage, and there are some veterans, as you and I discussed earlier, we're going to need electricians, we're going to need plumbers, we're going to need pipe fitters. Not everybody comes to work at Prudential. And by the way, nobody here sitting at this table or in the room is going to solve the employment problem of veterans. It's going to be small businesses that need to be engaged to really move the needle on that. But I would say we've hired handfuls of them, but it's the young men and women who are of that age aren't typically seeking out Prudential to find jobs. But we're going out and finding them and saying, just because you don't think you could do a job at Prudential, there probably is some things you can do here. I'll let others.
Sure. Keith?
The answer is not enough, okay? But it's the reason we started this program of the education program we have going on at Charlotte, and to see if it's we can expand it. It's for that particular reason that you brought up. So that's what our focus is, and we hope that we can break into that group and make them very productive employees within Accenture in the IT and consulting, outsourcing, or whatever. We're involved, as you indicated, right across the board in many, many disciplines. And in many of those, there are people that don't need a 4-year degree to do it, but they need the right background, and hopefully with what they've learned in the military from IT perspective, leadership perspective, coupled with what we could teach them with these type of classes, that we hope that they will be competitive in the future.
And if I could just say, our vet talent program consists of nothing but those people you described. And so the way that if there's not a job inside Prudential that already fits their skills and their education and what we're looking for, we're willing to train them to get them a certification or something that they can get so they can obtain that job.
Rachel, did you have a?
Yeah, I would add that at AT&T, about 60% of the veterans we hired last year fall into that category. It's probably the easiest slam dunk way to hire a veteran. We've got, as I mentioned in my remarks earlier, we've got jobs in our call centers, inbound, outbound, consumer business. We've got jobs as technicians, installing UVerse, wire technicians, linemen. Those jobs are outdoors, right? People who like to work with their hands, some of the same reasons why some of these folks joined the service. They like to fix things. And not all of those jobs require a college degree. So that's probably our most slam dunk area of veteran hiring, and we're doing some work developing out more formal JMO hiring programs, but we're almost hiring those without even trying. So we need to do more effort where the candidates need more help.
And just to round it out, JP Morgan Chase, in the more than 5,300 veterans we've hired in the last 2 years, almost a third of those are in that enlisted rank. But I think it speaks to the point that you've heard everyone reference, which is finding the right fit. So as the example that Steve used, to peel back the onion, look and see what those essential job skills are that you have, and how do we find the right talent in the military pool. So I think all of the organizations, at least that we've been working with, are trying to do the same thing, which is trying to work to find the right fit, not only to hire them, but to keep them once they come on board.
Can I make a comment about this one too? I think the question actually highlights, we take inquiries all the time from companies that fit the profile of, listen, I want to help, but the profile of employee at my company has a very niche set of skills or a unique educational profile, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is, the firms represented up right here, in a lot of ways, fit some of those profiles as well, but they've all found ways to contribute beyond just the hiring to advancing the employment situation of veterans, leveraging philanthropy, leveraging, Accenture's a great example of leveraging their pro bono resources and the talent inherent in a firm like Accenture to help community-based organizations get better at what they do with regard to serving vets, et cetera. So, my setup here is actually focused on the community-based organizations in the room. This is an opportunity for all of you to look for opportunities to serve those companies that want to get into this space, but can't do it through hiring directly. Go to them and be their solution to the problem. You know what? You can impact the unemployment situation of veterans by helping my not-for-profit grow. That's how that is, I mean, I'm a business school professor by training, so I think about these kind of issues from the perspective of a for-profit competitive business who is looking to solve their business problems. And if one of their business problems is, you know what, we need to be out there in this community and be perceived as positively impacting this important social and economic issue, if they can't do it by hiring, go to them and be part of the solution with regard to saying, let us help you solve your problem. And you know what? You can help pro bono. You can help by funding one of our workforce preparation programs that we run, whatever it is. That really is on this community, honestly, to tee up those kinds of opportunities for companies that otherwise couldn't engage because their unique hiring profile, educational needs, et cetera, et cetera.
Right here?
So a quick comment. This is not a question, but more of a plug for Accenture. I work with an organization in New York City, the Center for Employment Opportunities, and we're part of the Skills to Succeed program. And so Accenture volunteers come into our organization every week, and they're sitting down with our participants, and they're doing basically mock interviews that they're filming. And it's been a tremendous experience for our participants, and an experience that they just don't get the opportunity to get in any other place. And they will probably never be hired by Accenture, but they are getting there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, right here? Oh, yep, next. I got one here, and then I'll come over there.
This kind of follows on to what Mike was saying also. So what kind of programs have you established for hiring people with significant barriers to employment, with disabilities? Do you have particular programs for veterans? And if not, who do you rely on to make that work?
Is the question veterans with disabilities? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. In all of our efforts in the hiring, we have veterans with disabilities who are applying to work with Accenture just as other veterans are, all right? And so what we focus on is to make sure, which we are, all our facilities can accommodate everything that they require, all right? And we certainly have invested and we have that capability. All the training effort that we have been doing involves disabled veterans just as much as it involves veterans as a whole. And in fact, in that, I keep on going back to the Charlotte example, but there are numerous disabled veterans who are going through that training program too. So we focus on disabled just as we focus on veterans in the hiring process.
If I could just follow on, do you have special programs to help them, engage and make sure that they get their accommodations, or do you do it?
Yes.
Basically.
Yes. And that's just not veterans, but it's anyone with disabilities, okay?
And Bill, I'd say the same thing, except that I think we have a lot of work to do in this space as it relates to veterans. We're a member of the Chairman's Council with NOD, and so we get a lot of information from you. I personally, that's not my portfolio, so I know that we do the exact same thing. Anyone in the company with a disability, we have programs for them. I would like for us to become more expert in the veterans with significant injuries. I don't think we're there yet.
We've got a couple of programs at AT&T. The first thing we do is make it really easy for people to request accommodations. And so I get calls all the time from organizations or from individuals saying, what kind of jobs do you have for people with disabilities? And I say, all of them, right? What does this person want to do? Where do they want to live? What are they good at? What are their career goals? And then we can figure out the accommodations piece afterwards. So that's our general approach, but we do have some specific programs. One is called AT&T Serves, where we actually work with third-party organizations to hire disabled veterans to handle business customer care calls from their homes. So that's a program that's been expanding. We also have another program called Project Capability, which was modeled after the Walgreens distribution center model, where we've got individuals who have cognitive and developmental and physical disabilities who are hired to work in our Memphis distribution centers, and we've seen incredible productivity and retention rates there, and that program is also going to be expanded.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. This question is for Rachel, but I think it has applicability across the panel. I'm Dave Pennington with Navy Safe Harbor Wounded Warrior Program, the E2I coordinator. So I'm trying to get our wounded, ill, and injured sailors and Coast Guardsmen to work and connected with opportunities, but also spouses. And an increasing number of our constituent base are not able to work, but the spouse is looking to try to go to work, the care provider. And AT&T, in the fall last year, I was invited down to actually the Warrior Transition Command at the Hoffman Building and listened to an AT&T pitch on an effort to really reach out to the spouses of wounded, ill, and injured and try to get them opportunities for employment. So I was just wondering how that went for you and really for the whole panel, basically how the spouses of our wounded, ill, and injured can go to work as well.
So that's something that's actually on my to-do list this year. So whereas the last couple of years was really building out our infrastructure for veterans, this year is the year of the military spouse. We've got some significant goals and objectives in the amount of women that we hire throughout our business, and the military spouse community is not only 92% female, but also has tremendous unemployment and underemployment rates. And so for us, we really look at portability, and we look at our virtual jobs, so jobs that are approved for telecommute. We've got 2,300 retail stores. We've got 16,000 work locations. So we've got a lot of places to do your job. Not every job can be done remotely, but there are many that can. So we're doing a lot of work educating our managers on opening their hearts and minds to consider a telecommuting arrangement. And we're also trying to engage with military spouses through MSEP, and then also through the Military Spouse Blog Network, through the FRGs, and through grassroots efforts on a very local level. I'm working with MSEP on a mentorship council where we're trying to engage women at AT&T and in other corporations to serve as mentors for military spouses, to talk about how you can make sure to remain in sight and in mind even if you're working off-site. So we're hoping to contribute there, but I would love to hear any suggestions or input from anyone who's done that well. We're still working on that.
I would offer on this one, you know, we're probably not that far along in focusing exactly on that. However, in the Military Employee Resource Group, we have a large number of military spouses who are volunteers in that effort that are hired by Accenture in the normal hiring process. So they do a lot of volunteer efforts, but Accenture has been recognized as the Working Women's magazines, the other women's organizations as a great place for women to work because of the flexibility of the hours, you know, the working at home. I mean, you could be at home from in the morning till the afternoon doing whatever you're doing and start working from Accenture from 6 o'clock till midnight or whatever times those are, that have been very attractive for spouses in general to work on. So it's not particularly focused, but I think some of the policies are there for all of them to share. Okay.
And sorry, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to add, I'm not at liberty to tell you where and when exactly because it hasn't been announced yet, but we're working on a pilot which is 100% military spouses related to the work that Laura Dempsey and others are doing in this space. And so pretty soon, within a matter of months, we'll be able to announce. But the idea is that it's a really untapped resource, and certainly a group that they need the work. It helps them be able to continue to be the caregiver, and we like the idea of the tele or remote type activities.
And I think that question and the fact that, first of all, there's a lot of candor on the panel, but it's also a demonstration of how all of our respective programs have matured over the course of the last couple of years, that there's been a focus on just getting the foundation. Steve referred to a series of things about how you really change the corporate culture, position your firms for success. Rachel talks about from the very front end how those mentorship relationships with the veterans go. And so as we've built those foundations, we're now saying, okay, what's next? And I think Wounded Warriors, spouses, all of those things are next on our agendas. I have a question over here.
Yeah. First of all, the panelists, thank you so much. And I also appreciate for the action. I travel the country, so I hear a lot of talking, but you guys are actually acting. But the question I have is, so often when I travel the country, the question really is, how are you getting the word out? I mean, I'm always getting from communities accessibility. So I'm just curious about, and I'm, you know, and also Admiral, I mean, because you're talking about Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been down there. I'm familiar with Charlotte Bridge Home and whatnot. That's not a large military community in terms of inactive installations. So I'm just curious, how are you guys actively getting the message out so that these veterans, disabled veterans, know to come? If you could just answer that, please.
Let
Sure.
me start. Charlotte is again, that was a prototype, okay? It was just chosen because we had the right people to do that. So it wasn't focused on Fort Bragg or something like that, okay? There are various ways that we're doing it. We are going out to the TAP classes, any of the recruiting classes or the classes that are out there that are helping on transition to make sure that they know Accenture's available. If you got onto the Accenture website, there are recruiting fairs that we have going on. We advertise literally around the country that we're willing to talk to anyone in these locations. And so that is, and we bring our military employee resource group volunteers to those sites and those events. So those are two of the ways that we are getting the word out. I have not had any sense that we have not had enough people trying to volunteer or to sign up for Accenture. It's been more, the problem that we have had more is to make sure we can hire them because we get past the normal hurdles of the interview process and the resume.
Steve?
And
Yep. So we do all the traditional things that probably everybody here does. We have local relationships with local commanders. But you bring up a really interesting point, and it's one that I harp on a lot. What we really need is that peer-to-peer partnership between us and the Department of Defense. And quite often, it's difficult to have access to the wounded warriors, to let them know who you are and what you're doing. So you have to develop those local relationships. But at the national level, we're obviously doing things like meeting with all of the vices. We have great working relationships with your office. Those are the ways that we let people know about our programs. But as we move forward, I'm really looking forward to the breaking down of the barrier that I think has traditionally existed for many, many reasons between the business community that wants to help and the Department of Defense that has needs, and to bring us closer together. I'm looking for that type of relationship to really be able for us to educate the DoD about who we are, what we do, how we do it, and where we're at. Because Prudential's not everywhere. Other companies, AT&T, they're everywhere. So we can only be effective where we have presence, but we want that one-on-one relationship with the department.
And I also think, too, that we're seeing, to Steve's point on the relationship between the private sector and DoD, a real movement over the course of the last 2 years to the positive. So you're seeing groups come in, Marine for Life, Soldier for Life, all those kinds of things where the Army, the Marine Corps, DoD, they're starting to do the outreach to us as well as us doing the outreach to them. So I think it's working top down, it's also working bottom up, and then forums like this where we are able to talk about the substance of what we're doing, that it's to your point, it's not just the talk, it is the action. I think that's gonna be helpful for all of us.
If I could just add one more thing. You guys have the audience that we want to talk to, especially those that we know are transitioning out. We don't want to talk to those that you want to keep. We want to talk to the ones that are going to get a DD-214. And if we can get to them early enough, perhaps we can give them opportunities that will keep them off of filing for UCX, let's say for 99 weeks. But getting closer to where they are is going to allow us to be able to help deliver more information to them.
And I agree with that, in terms of when you look at the transition process, sooner the better. But then there are those that are already out.
Right.
And then that's another set of issues. And so again, that's just where, and again, in my travels, everyone's like, Tony, how do we get access? The public-private partnerships, philanthropic community, they all want to help, but it's like, how do I get that? So I was just kind of throwing that out there to try to get some ideas, or additional ideas of how you may be reaching the community aside from the normal traditional that we understand today.
Right, and I think all of us, oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Rachel.
I just want to be a little bit of a renegade, and I'm probably the one among us who's probably most entrenched in the recruiting. With the advances in social media and LinkedIn and Google search engine marketing, it's not really hard to find people anymore. The hard part is convincing them and converting them. And so I would say, you know, some of my recruiters say, well, how do I find veterans? I said, well, go on Monster and use some of the service branches in your search strings and scrub for a Salvation Army and Old Navy, because that gets funny. But, and there you have veterans. Veterans will apply for jobs in some of the same places that non-veterans will. And so if we all create our processes and make sure that our websites are military friendly, then the veterans that come across our jobs when they're searching on Google or Monster or wherever that will help them make the decision to apply and will help them be successful.
You can certainly tell that this is a veteran-focused, military-focused event because they are running this very tight to the clock. So unfortunately, we are about 30 seconds until time is out, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I can speak from experience that all of my colleagues here are extremely accessible and willing to share any information and their contact information. I'm certainly willing to share my information as well. I understand that Brian Williams, my colleague, who has been here over the last couple of days, has represented us well, and get him your contact information. We can, as Steve said, all learn from each other, completely transparent and willing to share whatever we have. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much.
Thank you.